CG, OG, and OO, please kindly follow suit, and so that we can begin the round. And then if someone can paste the motion here, that would be very fantastic. So we're waiting on CG and CO. I can see there are many people in this room. So CO and CG and OO should be here. All right, CG is here. Finally, OO.
Chair, OO is still in the prep room, so if you could go call them.
Oh, okay. All right. Go again. Okay, great. So everyone is complete. Once again, my name is Jeremy Noel. I am unfortunately the only educator in this room. Chair is fine in trying to refer to me, or panel, anyone works. Please, before you start your speech, if you're so inclined, kindly introduce yourself with your gender pronouns and your POI preference, very important. And then speakers, do try to adhere or to oblige the speakers what their preference is in terms of POIs and pronouns. That said, please do not badger, try to conduct yourself in a manner. It's a long day. And let's have a very interactive and engaging round. So that said, on the motion, this House believes that trade liberalization hurts SMEs. This House welcomes the Prime Minister to open the round for us. Also, your timer will be in the text space, but you can also have the option of keeping your own time. Yes, you are.
Thank you. So I'll be the Prime Minister for this round. If you would like to ask a POI, please just unmute yourself and ask. If I'll take you, if I wouldn't, please kindly unmute yourself and mute yourself back. I'll be starting, and I wouldn't be watching the text piece. So if I at any point in time I break in my speech, and please unmute and I'll let you go out and get better connectivity or something. All right. So I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. So the goal of today's debate is for us to clearly show you that trade liberalization hurts small and medium scale enterprises, right? Today's debate solely from ground. We are just supposed to show you that at any point in time where trade liberalization exists in any market or in any economy, small and medium scale enterprises do not benefit, and as they are the ones that mostly bear the brunt of these policies, right? So first of all, right, we need to be able to understand how necessarily these markets look like. Because these markets in every country are on two fronts, right? So you have the local markets and you have the global markets. The local markets necessarily engage with within countries, right? But then the local markets focuses on like enterprises or businesses that exist within particular country, right? A lot of countries in a bid to want to foster their markets and ensure that their markets grow and like have like that competitiveness and whatnot, right? Tend to open up their market systems and ensure that global markets and local markets can be able to interact. Right? But then what happens most of the time is that for that interaction to happen, there should be some sort of balance, right? What this means is that that balance should make it somewhat fair for local businesses or for small and medium scale businesses that exist within these countries to be able to fairly engage with these markets or global markets. Also understand that in certain instances, and in most instances, these global markets tend to provide mostly the same services or the same products that exist within these local businesses. So what happens most of the time is that you still see like global brands fighting head on with local brands, right? And that is a problem in today's debate, right? But then, Pano, also understand that these markets and the kind of markets we are talking about are physically interactive markets, right? So we are not talking about digital services, right? Talking about physical markets, right? Physical exchange of goods and services, right? So those so however those are made, that's what this debate necessarily is about, right? So let's get a clearer picture on what trade liberalization looks like and why we think it's terrible. Right? Because yes, it focuses on reducing things like tariffs, reducing things like licenses and whatnot, right? But then also what it does, right, is that because for most of the time states are necessarily like letting like releasing or like the potential to be able to get revenue from these areas, so like things like tariffs, things like positives, all those things. They tend to shift the cost because understand that in most instances there's a marginal loss in these things, right? Within these states, that states are willing to let go. So what they do most of the time is that they shift the cost onto other areas, right? So what does it look like? It looks like taxation in other areas of the economy, right? It looks like things like increasing interest rates. We think that those things are most likely what exist in trade circumstances, right? So it doesn't look like states saying, well, yeah, trade show tariffs or whatsoever, and other sides are equally as free. Right? What they do is that they kind of offset the cost in other areas. Right? Why is this problematic? Right? Because for a lot of the areas in which they offset, right, these things directly harm the production cost of small and medium scale enterprises that exist within these regions. Right? The problem is that these enterprises that exist within these areas, like these SMEs that exist within these countries, right, they essentially need a way to be able to produce their things or produce their goods fairly cheaply to be able to engage with the competitive prices that these foreign brands that tend to give them. Right? I think that these things are necessarily problematic, right? And then what happens to markets, right? When you have more trade labor, right? What happens is that already in status quo, there's an influx of like already in status quo in several markets, there's an influx of foreign goods right within the market, foreign brands and whatever. The thing is that these brands already have easy, like not easy, sorry, but have the ability to be able to reduce prices like by because of like larger production because they have like larger production which just decreases their cost, right? But then also they kind of benefit from states because it kind of benefits things like tax breaks fiscally for them for states or subsidies fiscally for them some states, right? We see that these things have like tend to have like a huge influence on how they're able to control pricing, right? Even in status quo. In instances where you decide to include trade liberalization, right, means that these guys have an unfair, like a very, very unfair competitive edge over small and medium scale enterprise. So it means that they have like free access to markets, but then also equally now have like a leeway to be able to price their goods very, very cheaply, right? Why is it important? Right? Because for a lot of these things, like these things are basically according to see, right? So most target like a huge chunk of price. Just can beat their price because what their production costs have become like so high, no more pay for time. Like that means that now SMEs find it very, 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 very difficult to be able to compete competitively with the pricing. That means guys we are saying that most of the time things are most likely or people are most likely to decide or choose or want to buy into like foreign brands because these things are clearly cheaper, right? Think that these things are problematic, right? But then also, we think that what happens necessarily is that the kind of between them necessarily, what happens necessarily is that these SMEs do not have the kind of shocks, that do not have the kind of ability to absorb shocks that already exist within the current systems. Like, what does this mean? Like, these guys are struggling, like, in terms of production costs, whatever. They're struggling to make up and get market because local goods already necessarily expensive, right? They need this to be and to offset this about 5 PY. 3, 2, 1. All right, sure. So I'm moving on. Talks about problems that are existing on both sides, like government intervention, like brand loyalty. What is the unique problem that exists only because of trade liberalization? So, like, see, understand this, right? So, there are certain things that small and medium scale enterprises must have, right? So, things like marketing power and distributive power that they do not have, right? Just understand that these corporations, these businesses or enterprises don't have that ability to expand and scale. That is the advantage that they have over these guys, over bigger corporations, right? Because what happens is the bigger corporations have that marketing ability, right? They have that distributive power. So understand that you need to be able to understand that these guys have the ability to be able to do these things. Like when you do, like when you implement like trade liberalization policy, means that make it very, very easy because the credit control distributing like and distributing tax and distributing tax, like when you control their own distributive measures, like these are make it very, very easy for them to go to infiltrate the places like small and medium scale enterprises don't have that ability. Like it's not just about it's not just these things do not happen on both sides. Right? But then Kanu, like let's talk about the problems that let's talk about like direct impacts that happen and why we think these things are terrible. Right? Because it's the best. What happens on upside, right? What happens on upside at best that these small businesses tend to be forced by these larger corporations when they feel like oh these guys will buy the evil, right? We think that this will necessarily help the progress of these smaller companies because what they start to do is to sell the company or to grow the company and expand, right? And then also we think that you leave them vulnerable with no ability to absorb shocks that exist, right? And then also we think that on one side there's an unfair
All right.
competition in pricing. We think that
Thank
we
you, Prime
need
Minister, for that speech.
to never been able to fool.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So, just a word of caution. Do try to, if you're not going to be looking at the text space for your timer, then keep your own time so that you're working within the time. It would be unfortunate for you to not finish because you did not have enough time or you didn't manage your time wisely. That said, I think we thank this House thanks the Prime Minister for that speech and now welcome the Labour opposition to open the case for the opposition bench. Hear him.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. But yes, please I also keep time on my side as well. PYs in the chat space, please don't unmute. Yeah, pretty much. He, him pronouns, but you can refer to me as a leader, so it's fine. I'm gonna start my speech in 3. Or do I press start? Or the chair will press start most? Okay. I'm gonna start.
Press start.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. I'm just gonna give 2 responses. The rest will come in the DLO speech. Just 2. The first is opening government says that they think the problem with local markets and global markets that they need to be a balance, and the problem here is that there is often the same product. And they say the problem with the same product is because there comes an overflow of a lot of resources and overflow a lot of products. It makes it very difficult to us to manage these considerations. So at the point at which trade liberalization exists, you saturate the market even more worse. We think new businesses develop every day. I'm going to give you 2 incentives why that's absolutely fine. The first is that states are happy with more businesses. And the reason why states are happy with more businesses is because they can do 2 things. Firstly, states have the ability for them to tax more interactions. For example, they can tax interaction like VAT, like that. That means it's easier for them to get even more money back into the economy. But secondly, they're more than happy to have more businesses because they can easily tax specific businesses. So you don't have to have a issue in as far as exporting and transporting, like tariffs, but specifically states do have a mandate to tax businesses as a virtue of the state itself. So trade liberalization doesn't mean that states, businesses just simply act out of pocket, but it inherently means that states have more incentive for them to do so. Why is it a good idea specifically for SMMEs? And this is a response to the idea of competitiveness. We think the influx of foreign goods is absolutely fine. 3 reasons that's the case. Firstly, you have more employees that you're likely going to employ, because what's the likeliness of a small business interacting with like literally the considerations and merging with other companies and still want to take employees from their own host states? Well, probably unlikely, but it's even more cheaper for them to employ employees within states. Secondly, it's significant SMEs often come up. That means that you have more ability for new companies like distribution, refinery, and franchises of an opt-in into these specific considerations. We think trade liberalization makes it easier for small and medium enterprises to exist anyway. But lastly, we think it increases the tendency for people to buy, which gives people more options to buy, to increase the quality. So the competition is based on quality. Why do we think this is likely to happen within specific states? And this is the characterization that I think I'm going to give in my speech. States still inherently regulate things like businesses, for example, through criminal weird or even civil laws. So we think states do have a mandate to protect in businesses generally, but at the point where you from other states and not pay tariff, that's more an incentive. Why do states often do this? It's because states still allow companies to have tax rates, quota systems like hiring individuals, reducing tax, and that. Why this is important that even with trade liberalization, legal economic regulations still exist, and we think that's absolutely fine, and we think it's enhanced. Why do we think that it does not hurt SMEs specifically in this debate? 3 reasons and 3 arguments that I'm going to give you. The first is to say that we want to create as much access as possible. That is the expansion of businesses. This oftentimes go into what opening government says about local markets and global markets. We think local markets can still compete, and we think that's absolutely fine. And they can compete within themselves, specifically for foreign forms of products and resources. We think that's even more justifiable. Secondly, we think that it eases markets engagement. That is to say that small businesses become more localizing and new businesses in new areas. That's absolutely fine because it develops the quantity in which you have saturation. Saturation is absolutely fine, as I've already told you in response. But thirdly, it's more easy to diversify local markets. Like, see, even if you have the same products and you're selling the same products as local markets, you want to expand to a new market, it's absolutely fine because the competition is whether or not you can still derive profit from it. A lot of companies can still have very good resources, and as far as assets that can generate capital, they become more competent than local markets. One, because they can get as much production cost low as any other company, so they can still regulate a lot of markets. But secondly, you can disrupt the local like loyalty that exists within these specific states. That is to say, the loyalty within local markets. Why this is good is, and is very has worked before, is because ShopRite opened new resources, new markets in smaller communities in foreign countries. Why that was easy is because they got investment to pay off the tariffs. A lot of the tariffs that they needed to engage. At trade liberalization, it becomes more easy for them to expand and becomes more competitive. Why do we think that this is in the best interest of SMEs? Anyway, 3 reasons. Firstly, reduce the barriers of expansion, so it becomes easier for companies like ShopRite to still sell. Even if opening government says we should not speak about tech, we're still going to include it because there's no reason why not to. Secondly, you decrease legal economic hindrances. For example, maize sellers in Botswana often suffer greatly in as far as making their comparative, whether or not they should expand their market and they can diversify the market and get more resources versus paying money and a surcharge on every transaction that they make. That sounds absurd, and they're unlikely to do so. So what you do here at the expense of trade liberalization is to tell companies that they need to constantly be selling to the same people, even though there's a chance of expanding globally. We think that's better on our side in as far as trade liberalization, because it ensures that these companies have an incentive to develop, one, to expand, but secondly, to ensure that there's no legal economic hindrances like surcharges that are most likely going to be incremented to them. But even thirdly, it informs locally and geographically partnerships. This means that small companies can cater to underdeveloped and small communities. A very good example, as I've already given, is ShopRite. And why that's a very good example for this purpose, for this debate, is that they, one, could enhance and create geographical partnerships, like, for example, getting subsistence farmers to be commercial farmers to fund for their own expansions. Why this is important is because you do enhance SMEs in the ways in which they can function. This makes it easier for them to opt into new markets and create more expansion for themselves. Second point of argumentation, why we think saturated markets are absolutely fine. We think that big corporations already can pay tariffs. So in as far as the debate of whether or not we think that big companies are gonna not suffer, we think they can already overarch all those barriers that exist. We think the only issue here is that saturated markets only exist within specific countries. At the point in which you reduce tariffs, like, for example, how Apple is now being rifled by Xiaomi and Poco in the US market is because you've reduced the tariffs that they need to pay for them to opt into that market. Already they have to consider production costs as MMEs. At the point in which you reduce that for severe consideration, it becomes easy for them to engage in it. Why do you think we win in terms of those two arguments already before I even give you the last one? Trade liberalization enhances three things: mergers, company buying, and stock sharing. It becomes easy for these companies to checkmate large corporations because now they're not only on the competing market, but they can also compete against local markets, which they otherwise would not have been able to because of tariffs. Lastly, why does liberalization enhance more business? First, it increases the supply value where it's most likely needed. A lot of these local companies and these medium companies is they realize that there's a lot of need that larger companies are not catering to. For example, in the US, it's only Apple and Samsung, but a lot of those market is not enhanced by the fact that some individuals can't afford those specific products. Apple is even increasing their prices with on a lot of their issues. We think trade liberalization increases supply, especially for space areas where they otherwise could not have existed. Secondly, SMEs can cater to markets larger economies, like, for example, ensuring that they don't necessarily innovate, they don't only innovate, but they can capture and better products that otherwise people would not have gotten into. Even if this debate is moral, that is to say that even if it's not in terms of what companies think it's in their best interest or society, we think it gives individuals more likely to options for what is best quality, but secondly, gives them the price range that they think they can most likely afford to. We win today's debate based on three levels. Firstly, why saturated markets are fine, why liberalization does not hurt these companies because of expansion, but lastly, why it enhances those specific companies. Thank you.
Open. Okay, so this house thanks the DLO for that speech. Sorry, the LO for that speech, and now welcomes the DPM to round up the case for the opening government. Here.
Hi, hello. Can you all hear me, please?
Yes, okay.
So I'll take POIs in via audio, yeah, or no, via chat. Yeah, I think I have a big screen looking at the chat here. So so if you have a POI, you can indicate via chat, and I would see it. So I would call you if I want to do that as and when. Okay. So I'm starting my speech actually in X, Y, Z. Within countries, SMEs compete with two institutions.
Hello.
One, hello.
DPM.
Yes, please. Yes,
DPM.
please.
I can no longer hear you, DPM.
Chair, the
Hello,
DPM
Chair.
Is it just me?
Yes, the DPM is audible.
Hello, Chair.
Please, someone confirm in the text space that is still audible or not.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
speaking right
Fine,
now.
I'll reconnect then.
I don't. Okay. I thought it's probably his muted me. Hello, Chair. Can you please hear me now?
Okay, yeah, I can. So please kindly read the motion just so I can confirm that you are perfectly audible.
The motion says this House believes that trade liberalization hurts SMEs.
Okay, great.
You
All right,
got
ready
that?
when you are.
Awesome. Okay. So great. So I'm starting my speech in X, Y, Z. Go. within countries, SMEs compete with two institutions. One, global corporations that my PM talks to you largely about. Two, big corporations within the countries that my extensions will be largely based on to scrap off a lot of things you get from LO and probably DLO and any other side in that regard. Let's start. Characterization of what SMEs that will feed into my extensions I'll be giving you. One, these SMEs are ones that do not have foreign traction. What does it mean? It means that they do not have those kind of foreign deals that exist in that regard. What that means is that they are less likely to be able to be the center of attraction for certain exchanges that could exist. Because the way these free trade deals exist is not in a vacuum. They usually exist normally as exchanges between corporations within countries. SMEs are normally out of context when it comes to these exchanges with free trade. Two, they do not have economies of scale that would be allow them to compete with the importation that comes in. What is OO's response to that? One, they say it's fine to have a lot of saturation within the system, but two, you allow people a lot of choices. The reason why they lose on that is because the motion asks them to say whether or not it hurts SMEs. The answer is the saturation, the competition that exists, it's one that hurts the SMEs because they don't have the economies of scale that largely allows them to be able to offset certain cost or competition. The best thing OO says that let them focus on more localized things. The important thing is this: importation only comes to the things that have demand and market within societies. That means that if the importation comes in, means that the goods are for markets that exist within societies. For example, when a lot of foreign corporations were building hospitals whatsoever, when we needed those things within Ghana, what OO says that force them to do other local activities. These are not realistic because most of those things are not gray areas they can exploit. They can't compete because they have less economies of scale in that regard. Importation helps them. The big guys, big corporations in these societies are not hurt, and I'll show you how. But three, they are clouded by the enterprise that are big enterprises within their local setting. And these are not global ones. Within the local settings, the big enterprises, they are the ones that cloud these small enterprises with the kind of free trade. Why? Because these big enterprises are ones that mostly have same deals with other big corporations in other countries. So because of their large corporate social responsibility and large revenue payment they give to the state, they have the state protection to be allowed these tax cuts. So the tax cut comes directly to the big corporations, and they are ones that states endorse to be able to export to other countries on these free trade deals. So these free trade deals are not ones that are open to simply everybody at any time. They are the ones that are coordinated by states to target big corporations they can enjoy from. So the big corporations are the ones that enjoy from the trade deals. But how do these big corporations are able to shield themselves from the influx of importation? One, because of the exchange deals, it means that even if there influx of importation, they also export to other countries and they also benefit. Right? But two, because of their large economies of scale, they are fairly able to compete with the prices with those import deals. What about SMEs? They struggle because one, you don't get the state protection, but two, you don't have the economies of scale to be able to compete with the pricing system that already exists. But three, you are not part of the exchange deals to be able to export outside to enjoy from those benefits. So there's no way you're going to offset the challenges you're going to have. Big corporations within these countries are the targets for state. They are the ones that are enjoying in that regard. Right? But the last thing on these small corporations is that they are less likely to be co-opted by state because I've already told that state enjoy so much from them. So the best thing is that they will say, let's invest some money into SMEs, but those things are not enough. They are not even reaching out to the best thing. What's best can happen is what LOO tells you. Merger. We think that those things are things that are hurting small corporations because they need to thrive. Mergers are not things that help them. But if partnerships are going to even exist, there are a few ones that are going to enjoy. SMEs at large are not going to enjoy from those partnerships in that regard. But in the best case, those partnerships are ones that are going to come from boutique or multinational corporations. SMEs are eventually going to fade out in that regard. We don't think that SMEs get any better thing from that kind of aspect. Let me again talk about big corporations and how they are the ones that enjoy, and that gets the SMEs more from these free trade things, right? Because one, big corporations have high economies of scale. See, I'll take you later, right? They have high economies of scale. What does it mean? One, they have the social capital. They already existed for a long time in that regard. They have more revenue streams, right? but two, they are ones that are relevant for states because they're the ones that are doing the CSR and tax payments and tax more revenue for taxes and all that. What does it mean? It means that for the benefit of the tax cut, for the benefit of licensing and all that, they come directly to these big corporations in that regard. Small corporations are not going to enjoy from those things when they are going to export because they can't even export one, but to states not allow these people because they are supposed to give them to big corporations. But it means that when there's an influx of importation from the free trade, these big corporations are able to shield themselves because one, they have large revenue streams, but two, states are already protecting them. What about SMEs? SMEs don't have large streams of revenue. Two, states are not protecting these individuals because you're not giving them much in CSR projects and all that. It means that in that regard, you are ones who are going to suffer from the price hiking, from the price competition that's likely to happen. It means that you are less likely to attract states. CO 3, 2.
Actually show why, in spite of all these incapabilities and their troubles, they should still suffer the various expensive product that will come if this trade liberalization is taken off, even for those who engage in it.
Obviously, CEO doesn't understand the debate. The debate says that should we show you that SMEs are hurt by these things? One, PM has already shown you how they are hurt even on about things. Two, I've shown you how big corporations are the ones that are benefiting from the trade deals and all that, and SMEs are more hurt. I don't understand what CEO wants us to do again in that regard, right? But then again, what are the clear-cut impacts that you get from our side? When and how are SMEs affected? One, the availability of better price competition in goods is one. Better prices, goods of prices is one that's a competition for SMEs because of the many reasons I've told you. So it means that big corporations are able to compete, and then globalized corporations are able to benefit. SMEs cannot compete with the goods, right? But SMEs too. SMEs end up being just a warehouse for measure for goods that are imported. They can't be able to specialize in the kind of things they want because they don't have the market to be able to do that. But three, big corporations are the ones that have state protection and enjoy from these free trades because they are the ones that give the bigger CSR contributions and better revenue contributions. Small SMEs are not targets for states, so they are not even given the opportunity to enjoy from these things, right? But three, the offset that PM tells you about states investing into the streams into other things is one that goes against the SMEs themselves because there's high production costs. The big corporations, they don't suffer because they already have other revenue streams, another alternative to be able to offset the prices that have been offset by states because states are even protecting them. SMEs are worse off with these free trade deals for the vast majority of reasons I have told you exclusively, and what my PM has told you all has a lot to do.
All right. So this House thanks the Deputy Prime Minister for that speech, and that brings us to the end of the case for the opening government. We now welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the opening half for us.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sure. I'll take POIs in the text. Right. So 3, 2, 1. OO has very little to do because of OG's case to win the debate. So I'll take a POI from CG because I probably expect better. Because there are two problems with the OG case. Let me start from DPM. You realize, Pam, go through your notes. All DPM's problems are because of corrupt government, dirty government practices. They are never because of trade liberalization. Because in purity, trade liberalization means that everybody from any country within those countries that have those agreements should be able to send goods and receive without any tariffs, which means that if it is me, Kelvin, who can only export 5 tins of milk to South Africa, you should not charge me tariffs, the same as Nestle, who can send maybe 50 cartons of milk. It is never the case that states secure this for only big crops. But if it is the case, It means the problem is state selective application of benefits through things like lobbying and corruption. We don't think that as a good OG team, a corrupt government should be your metric. But if it is, as it is in the debate, it means that their problem is corrupt government and poor application of government policy. That is not the fault of trade liberalization. That's the fault of your terrible government. We are done with the DPM case. Now let's go to the PM case, because PM has a lot of interesting problems as well. PM's problems also do not win the debate, because what do they talk about? Offsetting of cost. These things happen in both sides, because everywhere companies want to reduce the amount of cost they incur. Two, things like expansion and bringing market power. These are things that they do on both sides, right? Whether there are tariffs or not, companies will always want to expand. Brand loyalty. These are things that exist whether there is no free trade or whether there is free trade. Like, for example, so even right now, Apple does not have free trade agreements with many countries, like probably in African countries, for example. But still, Apple is one of the most expensive because of brand loyalty. People still buy them and complain any day. I have friends who are broke because of iPhone, they still complain and go and buy. What it means is two things. One, cheaper goods does not mean that people would want to buy it the more, because everybody knows that Apple produces their phones super cheap in China and Vietnam. They use terrible labor to be able to get for cheap prices, but they come and sell it for $1,500, $2,000, and people still buy them because they are molded into that code of regularity. What it means is that even if Jesus makes your itel phone for you, people will not buy your itel phone no matter how cheap it is. What it means is that it's really a lot of problems that are systemic. You can never say it is because of trade liberalization. But I have a very intelligent case that stems off my partner's case. But before that, let's do a bit of what you got from Pule in his early speech. Very important. He tells you specifically. One, he expands the need for mergers to be able to take down monopolies and competition. You need to realize, Paul, that big corps can always pay tariffs. I said in the text, it's really not a problem that because of tariffs, then they would stop bringing it. They can always pay these things anyway. But two, what it means is that on their side, you promote less quality because you help build at best. That's in the case where big corps. You help build at best terrible local systems because of monopoly. And what it means is that people have very limited choices. Three, their wealth is very limiting because it doesn't explore things like e-commerce. So, for example, you can be able to sell as a small business on Jumia, on AliExpress. Many AliExpress businesses are very small businesses that have been able to use e-shopping platforms to be able to expand. We don't think that market is like physically in the country. No, with free trade, means that even if people in other countries are willing to buy your produce, exports does not stop you from reaching out to them. Their world, when there are tariffs, condemns these small businesses to that small local environments they are in their home countries, and they can never expand. Before I continue to my main extension, let me take CG.
So the big assumption in your case is that these local companies can take advantage of these open borders. Usually they are not able to take advantage of them because of the bar system that they live in, but because of the kind of competition that exists outside and how they can break through over there.
You need to realize the problem is this. One, bad government systems. That is not a problem of trade liberalization. Your government is corrupt. It's not tariffs that will make your government better. Two, they say things like competition. They need to show how when there is tariff, in tariff system where it is even more expensive for SMEs to be able to, should I say, export, because when there's a tariff, it means that then it becomes more expensive to export. I've already shown you that big corps can still export anyway because they have millions or billions in cash. A small corp will find it more expensive to export, which means at best competition exists on both sides. But we say that on our side it is cheaper to export, on their side it is more expensive. And you know what more expensive means? Means your produce, which is deemed as not quality, becomes more expensive. Let me go to my main extension. You need to realize, panel, Whose POI is that? Let me take the POI.
Yeah, so the problem is this: when we don't do things like tariff, taking off tariffs, right? These guys have to come and build the companies in these countries. So things like transfer of knowledge, etc., are things we get that you don't get on your side. You let go of things such as social corporate responsibilities like building internet sectors, etc. That can help us.
Why you lose this debate? Because you need to realize, panel, the debate is about consumers and citizenry. It's about SMEs. So if you have a big company coming to build their companies in those small countries, they drown competition because SMEs can hardly employ, because then they are able to drown all your workers for the little raw materials that you are sharing as small businesses. They can buy those raw materials in bigger quantities, because if it is maize, they can buy more maize than 4 SMEs combined, which means that your local suppliers will want to trade with those companies who can pay more and are more reputable, more than they will want to pay with you. Again, they create worker upset, because most of the time people want to work with those bigger companies. For what it means to a very large extent is that because they are in those countries, they don't pay those tariffs anymore, which means that their products become far, at least in our world, there's a bit of transport cost. On their side, when it happens, there is no transport cost, which means that things become far cheaper. We defend small businesses better than they do. They allow big businesses to come and physically drown them there on their side. We will.
So this House thanks the Deputy Leader of Opposition for that speech. That brings us to the end of the debate for the opening half. We then welcome the Member of Government to open the case for the closing government. Here. Once again, speakers, please try to be noteful of your time. Once your time has elapsed, I will stop writing. So whatever comes after that is just talking. Member of Government, we're ready for you, please.